Hello, everyone. I thought I would read to you all of Chapter 3 of my book, Silent Reckoning, which is about one of the characters, Walter Peterson, strolling through New York City during the 1920s. So I think it has a lot of ambiance and it's very relaxing and tranquil. Chapter 3, The Metropolitan Twilight. Overwhelmed by the metropolitan twilight, Walter guided his pupils towards the ravaged pavement, desperate to spare his sensory receptors from the saturations of artificial illumination. Lit with the intensity of 1,000 suns, the skyline beckoned to his adventurous spirit, surpassing his barriers of better judgment. The night had lost none of its potency. Unlike the callous wickedness that permeated the light of day, the night unveiled melodious whispers of serenity. During the hours preceding dawn, all academies of deceitful thought diminished, momentarily suspended by the merciful caresses of an autumn night. As Walter continued walking, he could barely detect the pedestrian echoes that had once engulfed the city. Rarely experienced in his lifetime, all seemed tranquil. Faintly in the distance, harmonizations of sirens prodigiously sang. Their melodies seeped through the eroding underbelly of the metropolis, tearing away at the symphonies of disorder. With the night descending into a maelstrom of uncharted swan songs, the cumbersome air, unusually free spirited in its calculations, capitulated to the seductive humidities of dawn. The sun protruded over the skyline, its presence just barely perceptible. The clouds in the sky dissolved, their vapors retreating to the patches of overgrown grass. Very incrementally, the tranquillities of the night, once thought to be indestructible, faded into the imprints of the past, perhaps to return at a later interval in time. Rejuvenated once again, the turbulent combustions of industrialization unleashed a vociferous war. Seemingly all at once, vehicles of profound ingenuity seized control over the dilapidations in the pavement, their speeds incalculable. The city was alive once again. The remnants of the night, although still somewhat potent, no longer held sway over the tempestuous bustles of everyday life. Walter continued to stare at the sidewalk, almost incapable of confronting the hazardous realities of existence. Around every corner, every intersection, displays of opulent modernity awaited him. In a very brief period of unspecified interludes, the world as he had known it had completely unraveled. Peering into the hearts of the ornately constructed automations, ornaments of times gone by gradually materialized, instilling the centers with faint compositions of archaic innovations. The wheels on the vehicles receded into the continuities of temporal time, replaced swiftly by dexterous manifestations of soft flesh. Well bred in almost every conceivable manner, the legs galloped and trotted, as if eager to acquiesce the whip that encroached upon them. The echoes of the feet, combined with the persistent clattering of the whip, brought a sense of tranquillity to Walter's disenfranchised contemplations. No longer plagued by the unsentimental cries of industrialization, the streets were endowed with vocalizations of primordial nature. Walter closed his eyes, temporarily at one with the sensory refinements that flowed through the somber air. Youthful rays of amber light, some of them quite fluid in projection, stroked the surface of the luminous skyline. Lost in a sea of nostalgic reflections, Walter released a series of passionate sighs, his palpitations light and devoid of scrupulous burdens. The innocence of his childhood seized the intersection of time that he inhabited, instilling it with apparitions of Victorian sobriety. No longer barren and forsaken, the street glistened with pristine vibrancy. The ominous shadows of the present faded away. No longer filled with the poisonous fumes of modernity, the air was pure, untarnished, and susceptible to the divine intricacies of nature. Just as Walter adjusted to his new environment, the swaying tides of industrialization reassembled, tearing through the lucid enchantments that possessed his mind. Yet again, symphonies of sirens permeated the city streets, through which clouds of hazel vapor flowed. The jaunty rustling of the horses ceased, swiftly replaced by echoes of motorized engines. The world had returned to its present state of decay. The past was far away, possibly never to be revitalized again. He was trapped, through no fault of his own, within the perilous confines of contemporary civilization. The flashing of the neon lights, paired with the incessant ringing in the streets, triggered a sense of disillusionment within his discombobulated receptors, further distorting his perception of reality. Almost out of nowhere, dark clouds configurated in the sky, their exterior layers rife with skirmishes of moisture and sunlight. Very gently, diminutive droplets of earth landed on his shoulder, instilling the fabric with stains of divinity. Rousing from its inactive state, the wind fell prey to the melancholy nuances that swirled through the sultry atmosphere. It circulated around his upper temple, caressing the protruding blemishes in the complexion. While most people around him recoiled from the tempestuous saturations of moisture, Walter stretched out his arms, unusually receptive to the tears of nature. Showered with purified drops of rejuvenation, his cheekbones released the tension that dominated their composition, with the skin receding downwards. The dark clouds gathered around the pigmentations of amber light, obscuring their vibrant musings. As long as the light remained encapsulated within the elegant barriers of vapor, nothing would interfere with his moment of peace. Peering up at the succession of dusty windows that presided over him, Walter envisioned all of the lives that he had never touched, all of the souls that he had never laid eyes upon, and contemplated the very meaning of his meager existence. Morning after morning he roamed the same street corners, never satisfied with his lot in life. But what else could he do? The passage of time marched on without him, to his utter detriment. He would always be, in the grand scheme of things, just another insignificant soul within the vast sea of humanity. Even while listening to the soulful melodies that echoed out of one of the apartment apertures, Walter could still not come to terms with the sheer fatalism of his philosophy, the sheer meaninglessness of it all. Sooner than anticipated, every soul, every sentient being within the concrete jungle of the metropolis would perish, some of them in very agonizing manners. Save for the providence of God, all would be lost. The precursors of nihilism returned to Walter's countenance, instilling dark spheres under his eyes. As the metropolitan dawn emerged, all embellishments of the faltering night evaporated. Reclaiming its supremacy, the unimpeachable light of day swept through the streets, its vitality finally ascending. Only halfway conscious of his environment, Walter glanced at his coffee-stained jacket, his lips quivering as he did so. The dust on his collar, although barely perceptible, caused his skin to cling to his cheekbones. The holes in his shoes, along with the tears in his trousers, prompted his eyes to flutter and rotate, diminutive alignments of perspiration gathering around the outskirts of the eyelids. The sunlight revealed to him who he truly was, just another face in the crowd.